Hey everyone, it's Carly Hall, and in today's tutorial, we will be making a leather patch that you can apply to any apparel item. So you'll need a project blank. I'm applying it to this hat today. You'll need a piece of leather. This is veg tan leather, and you'll want to make sure to use leather that is dye-free and doesn't have any type of finish because we are going to be cutting it with the Glowforge. And when you put leather in the Glowforge, you want to make sure that it's finish-free because if you cut something with a finish, it can create toxic fumes. So this is all natural veg tan leather, and it is completely safe to cut in your laser. If you don't have veg tan leather, you can also look at products that are laser safe. So they do have laser safe leathers and leatherettes if you're interested in those. Before we cut our patch, we're going to cover it with this transfer paper. It's paper material. It feels like masking tape, and you can use painter's tape or masking tape. And we'll cover our entire piece of leather so that we don't get any type of char marks. So you can see when you don't mask it, you'll get this charring around the edge. And if you like that look, then that's great. If you don't, we can cover it up with some masking paper before we cut it. In Illustrator, you'll want to start with your image that you're going to create your patch for, and then we're going to draw a rectangle around that image. You can choose any size that you'd like. You can make it as close to the image or as far away from the image as you want, and it'll come in just as a plain rectangle. I like to round my corners just a bit because I don't want it to be a super stark corner there, but that's completely up to you. You can round your corners by pulling this point, and it'll round all four at the same time. Next, I'm going to create an offset, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go to Object, Path, and then Offset Path. This window will open and we can create a preview and see how far we want to offset our path. Depending on the look you're going for, you can offset this as much or as little as you want. And let's start by saying 0.5. I think I want to go a little bit further out, so let's do 0.8. And that looks good there. And then we're going to click OK. So now if I change it to my outline view, let me show you what's going on. And I'm on a Mac computer, so I'm going to click Command Y to show you my outline. And I have this offset around my path, and then I have this internal line, and that's what we're going to use to make stitch lines. So let me go back to this view here. I will change this so you can see. So I just swapped it, and I have my outline. Let's make it just a little stroke so you can see. So there's my outline, and that is the cut line that my Glowforge will follow. And now I'm going to create a faux stitch line so it looks like there's stitching on my hat. Once again, I'm going to swap the fill in the outline so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to keep this one at a stroke of 1 because I want my stitch line to have a little bit of weight. Then up at the top, or wherever your line controls are, you're going to choose stroke while that line is selected, so the internal offset there. Click on stroke, and then this is where we can have some fun. So I'm going to choose dashed line, and I like my corners to be dashed on the edges, so you can play around with these different settings here. So play around with whatever look you would like, and once you're happy, I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so here are the settings I ended up with. I did a stroke weight of 1, I did the harsh projecting cap, I did the miter joint for my corners because I ended up liking how that corner looks, and then I also did the align stroke to the center so that my stroke always comes out around the edge. So if you want to increase the weight, it'll always be in the center there. I'm going to keep it at 1, and then I did a 7-point dash. And I did an even dash to gap ratio. Now that we are set, we can't keep this path just like this because Glowforge will see it as a line. So we actually need to create an outline. So we're going to choose Object, and then go to Path, and then Outline Stroke. And then what that will do, it'll turn all those into their own little images. So again, you can check your work by seeing the outline view, so we can go to View and then go to Outline. And you can see now what the Glowforge will do is it will actually follow that path. So that will work great. Let me go back to the regular view. And now we're going to set up the colors so we can tell the Glowforge where we want each action to go. So here's what our little patch will look like. You can make sure everything is centered and aligned however you'd like. So I'm just going to use my align tools and align that all so that it's nice and centered. And we're ready to send it to the Glowforge. When you are about to export, you can double check to make sure that your sizing is correct. So my patch right now is 2.7. Originally I said I wanted it to be 3 inches. So if you want to adjust any of your sizes, oops, let me highlight everything. And let's adjust our size. I'm going to do 3 inches. And so it's 2 by 3 is my final patch size, which looks great. So now we're ready to save it and bring it into the Glowforge software. So we're going to come up to File and say Save As. And then you'll want to save it wherever is easy for you to find it. So I'm just going to call this Haul Patch and change the format to an SVG, a scalable vector graphic. And then we can just click Save. All of the settings here are exactly what you'll want to do. So SVG 1.1, type SVG, subsetting none, link, and then we're going to click OK. So while my Glowforge is powering on, I am going to mask my leather. I just need a little portion of my leather covered, so I'm just going to cover right here. And you'll want to make sure that's stuck on there pretty well so it doesn't lift up while you're cutting. A brayer or a squeegee works really well for this, so you can just brayer it on and make sure it's all stuck down. If you're curious about the thickness of this leather, it is 2.62 millimeters thick, and it will vary in thickness across the piece of leather, but this is considered heavy-duty leather, so when we're choosing the settings in the Glowforge, we'll want to choose the thicker leather option. In the Glowforge software, you'll want to choose the big plus sign to import your artwork and then choose Upload. Then we're going to upload that SVG that you saved and click Open. So here's our patch, and you can see it came in at the correct dimension, and then we're going to enter the settings. So we're going to choose leather, so you can search for leather. And with the Glowforge, you do not need to use proof grade material. You can use laser safe materials. You just want to make sure that you're careful with the settings. So we're going to choose that thick natural leather. And then we're going to set up the different settings. So for the Engrave, we are actually going to start by ignoring this, and I'll explain this in a second. And then for this one, we're going to cut it. And you can adjust the settings if you want to, but the proof grade cut will work great. It's 168 and precision power is 100. Now we're going to load our leather into the laser and set it up to cut it. So here's the Glowforge. We're going to open the lid, and I have my piece of leather ready to go. So I'm going to put that into the bed of the laser. And then I have these Crumb tray pins, and you can use these. You can cut them on your laser, or you can use masking tape to hold down your material. But I like the pins, so you just stick them into your Crumb tray, and then it holds down your material nice and flat. And you can see now my material won't move around. It's nice and flat, and we can close the lid. So back on my software, you can see a preview of where my material is sitting. And I always like to start by setting the focus. This is optional, but since I'm going to cut right here, I'm going to set the focus to this area so that I have a good idea of how thick the leather is, where it's showing up, and then I can position my patch a little bit better. All right, so now it's done focusing. We're just going to slide our image over to the position that you want to cut it in, making sure that you're only on the masking tape area. And you can come out to as far close to the edge as you feel comfortable. I like to usually give myself a little bit of a buffer just because the fisheye that is capturing this photo is a little off sometimes. So this is about as close as I would get. Again, we're ignoring the Engrave and we're just cutting the outline because we're going to peel away that masking tape before we engrave it. So we can come up to the top and click Print, and then the Glowforge will give us an estimated print time. So it'll take about 20 seconds to cut out the patch, and then we'll move on to the next step. So we're going to go back over to the laser and click the magic button from the laser. On the computer side, it'll tell me that it's cooling down, and then it will be almost done, and then it's ready to open up the lid. So you'll just want to wait until you get the ready to go print done, and then we can open up the lid. So without moving the patch, you're just going to peel away that transfer paper so you can see the char on that. And now we're going to engrave that patch. So without moving anything, you're going to close the lid back down and we can engrave it. From the software side, now we're going to switch things. So we're going to choose the outline and ignore that cut line. Then you're going to choose your artwork and we're going to engrave it. And you have a couple of different options. You can do a draft graphic, which is the lowest quality, SD graphic, or HD graphic. And it'll all take a little bit more time depending on the intensity of lines per inch. So the draft graphic has the least lines per inch and then a little bit less power. So the lower the power, the lighter the engrave, and then it has 195 lines per inch. So I'm going to do an SD graphic, so the middle, and it has 71 precision power, and I'm going to drop this down to 225 lines per inch. So I typically choose 225 lines per inch because it has a ton of detail, but it's not a crazy long time for your laser to engrave. So if you want to create a custom setting, you can say, I want this to be my hat patch setting, and you can save that so you know it for the future. So you can see I have a cutting board setting there. Then once you're happy with your settings, you're going to click the print button, and again, the Glowforge will tell you how long it'll take to engrave. While this is preparing, you'll notice that it doesn't look like it's completely lined up, but don't move your artwork. Leave it exactly in the same spot. And that's what I was kind of talking about with the warp from the camera. So again, don't move anything. We didn't move anything on the leather side, so don't move your artwork. It'll engrave in the right place, even though it looks like it's way off right now. So this will take 6 minutes and 10 seconds. So I'll show you the laser and I'll time lapse the engrave. All right, so now that it says print done, we can go ahead and grab our patch from the laser. Here's our patch, and you can see that even though it looked like it was going to be off from the image on the camera, you can see that it's perfectly centered on the patch since we left it all in the same place. You can see that there is a little bit of hazing around the patch. I don't worry about that too much since I want that dark engrave and we are going to stain this. But if you don't like the haze around the image, you can decrease your power to get a lighter engrave. So we're going to stain it. And all you want to do first is just kind of wipe off any of that char. And you can see that it lightens up pretty quickly. So you'll just wipe that off. Make sure to protect your work surface. I'm using this light brown leather dye. And I'm just going to give it a little shake. And then we will use this dauber to apply it. The key to dyeing leather is you want to move kind of quickly and you don't want to stop. So once you put it on, you kind of just want to go over it and move pretty quickly so you don't get any streaks, and then just cover up the entire image. Don't forget to grab at the edges, and you can use a generous amount and just kind of spread it over your entire image and it will soak into that leather. So once you have it all applied, you're going to let it dry. And you can see that it looks really dark right now, but don't worry, it's going to lighten up quite a bit. So you'll just let that dry and set there. And then when we come back, we have the option to apply a sheen onto it. So if you want it to have more of a sheen, you can apply a matte finish, a satin finish, whatever finish you'd like. I'm going to leave this raw and we will let it dry and then we'll glue it on. Here's our patch after I let it dry overnight. So you can see that it has lightened up quite a bit, but it is still pretty dark. So this is the light brown. So if you want something lighter, you'll want to go lighter than light brown. But since I was going for kind of a subtle difference, this is my favorite stain to use. If you wanted to coat it with that sheen, you would do it at this step and then let it dry before you glue it on. But since I kind of want it to weather and have a natural leather look, I'm going to skip that step and apply it to my hat. There are a ton of ways to secure your patch. I'm going to use a tailor's ham, which looks like this, and I'm going to stick it inside my hat. This is a pretty sturdy hat. It's pretty rigid right here in the front, so you don't really need a tailor's ham, but I'll show you why I like using it. So I'm just going to stick the ham right inside, and then we're going to apply some glue to the back of our patch. This is the glue I'm using. It's leather and suede glue by Eileen's, and we're just going to apply it to the back. You can use a generous amount because we are going to smooth it out with a paintbrush, but you'll want to make sure not to get too close to the edges because we don't want it to seep over the edge of our patch.
So either using a foam brush or a paint brush, you can paint out the glue so that it's nice and thin so that it doesn't ooze out of the side. I'm going to take mine close to the edge, just making sure that's a thin coat so it doesn't ooze out, and wiping off any excess. I have seen a couple of people recommend putting super glue to the edges so that the super glue kind of works as a clamp, but I'm going to show you what I do, and that worked great for me. So we're just going to paint this out nice and smooth all over the edges. Check your patch and just wipe off any of the glue if it's seeped over to the edge, just so it doesn't dry on there. And once you're ready, we're going to stick on our patch. This is the super glue that some people recommend putting along the edges instead of the leather glue, and this will dry quicker, so it kind of holds it in place while your other glue is drying. But we're going to use the ham and some rubber bands. So with your hat in front of you, you're going to make sure that the correct orientation of your patch is facing you, and then push your hat back so you can kind of find the center line. I also like to use the threads on the bill of the hat because that will give you a good center mark. And if you need to tape those out so you can see better, you can do that. And then you're going to line it up just right in the center of your hat. You'll want to push down on your leather patch just for a second to kind of get it to tack into place. So I'm going to hold it here for about a minute. Once you feel like your patch is kind of sticking, it's going to take about 12 hours to dry, but you can use a rubber band and stick it around the entire hat and ham and use that as a clamp to hold it in place while it dries. I leave mine on there for about an hour because I don't want any indentations on my patch. So I'll come back in an hour and take those off and then let it dry for the rest of the 12 hours. I'm going to add one more rubber band right at the top of these corners, and I'm going to pull this down to the corners. The corners are what I care most about because once you get the corners stuck on there, the rest of your patch will lay down pretty flat. So here's what our hat looks like at this stage. And like I said, you'll just want to leave this on for about an hour so that the glue can set up, and then you'll remove those so that you don't get any indentations in your leather patch, and then you'll let that dry for 12 hours. So let me show you the dry one. Here's our final project. The patch is really on there. I'm pulling really hard and it is not coming off. I think I could probably pop it off, but I would take some of the fabric of the hat or the back of the leather off. So it is secure. I used the rubber band technique and just let that dry overnight after I pulled off the rubber bands. So it does take a while for it to glue, but it is worth it. Another option is that you can use your Glowforge and actually cut through where the lines are and make your own stitch lines and then run a thread and needle through those stitch lines if you don't have a leather sewing machine. So if you want a little bit more interest, you could add some stitching in addition to the glue. But I love how easy this was and no sewing required. As a reminder, all of the products are in this video's description, including my $500 discount on a Glowforge. So if you are interested in buying a Glowforge, I do have a referral link that can save you up to $500 off. So check that out, and I'll also link to all of the other products in this video. If you found this video helpful, I would love if you like it and would consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.